Welcome back to Before You Go. Today's segment focuses on a really heavy topic. The segment is entitled You Are Enough, an emotional wellness tutorial on mental health and suicide in the African American community. And if you see this suicide prevention lifeline number, you can go ahead and put it in your phone or write it down. It's not a bad idea to keep that in your phone in case you or someone close to you ever needs it. Before we get started, please go ahead and like and subscribe to the channel. After the video, please comment below. I would love to know if anybody has any additional tips or resources surrounding this topic. I don't think we can ever have enough information when it comes to trying to help people who are in desperate need. And again, before we get started, I'm going to display the copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act. I will be using some clips and social media posts and things like that, still shots, for the purpose of criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. So we're using fair use. So I want to go ahead and get started. The first person I will talk about briefly is this young lady who jumped off of her Manhattan high rise. Her name is Cheslie Kryst, and it has been all over the news, social media, blogs, and things like that. Cheslie was only 30 years old. She died on Sunday, January 30th of this year. Again, she jumped from the 29th floor of her high rise. And, this is you can see the pictures here. She's a very beautiful, accomplished woman. She was an attorney. She practiced civil law in 2 states. She was an entertainment correspondent, news correspondent. Uh, she was the 2019 Miss USA winner. So she had a lot of accomplishments, more than a lot of people her age. A little bit of extra background was she was from North Carolina. She got her law degree and her MBA from Wake Forest University. She was a track star in high school and college, and you could tell she was really into health and fitness. Her most recent hobby, like most of us, she has a YouTube channel, and so her topic was healthy hair, right? Her hair journey. And she at one point did the big chop and then just took, viewers on her hair journey. And you can see there that, again, that's her hair. It's all long and very, very beautiful. So that is Cheslie's background. Uh, just in general, when we're talking about some statistics and some data surrounding this topic, this information comes from the Center for Disease Control. And it talks about suicide being the 10th leading cause of death in America. In 2019, there were just over 47,000 people who took their own lives, and there were 1.38 million people who attempted to take their own lives, And this data is from 2019. I am interested to see what the data looks like post COVID, right? So remember, COVID started around December 2020. So that information should be coming up pretty soon. And that's going to be pretty interesting data. Even more interesting than what I just showed you is some data surrounding African Americans and Blacks in America. In 2019, suicide was the second leading cause of death for Blacks or African Americans ages 15 to 24. So that very young age group, that was the second leading cause of death. That is very, very concerning. Also in 2018, the death rate from suicide for Black or African American men was 4 times greater than that of African American women. So, again, two very alarming stats that we probably need to continue to talk about in our community. Now, this notion of success is something we need to discuss. Success does not equal happiness. And that is crystal clear when you look at Cheslie. So here you see a compilation of pictures from, again, from high school when she was doing track meets. She talked about not liking her hair when she did the big chop, and her sister had to do some cornrows on the side until her hair grew out. So it's just been a very long journey for this young woman. Um, and, the other interesting thing about her, again, she was very successful. Gayle King was one of her mentors. And Gayle told the story on her news show about recently having lunch with her and not seeing that there were any signs whatsoever. A lot of people that spoke of her talked about what a bubbly personality she had. I heard somebody say she never had a bad day, right? And so that was Cheslie, just the all around American girl, black black woman, making it work with what she was given in America. The story of us all, right? But again, she had some major accomplishments, but there obviously was some internal strife there. Um, Gail King also mentioned, she said, how do I know that something's wrong? Like, I didn't know that something was wrong with her. How do I know that she needed help? Right. And that's a question that everybody can ask themselves. And hopefully we'll get a little bit of an answer here through this video. But some of the red flags that were raised for me for this person and really others that we'll talk about, you know, people on the surface look great, right? Especially in social media posts. This is somebody who was in media, right? So she knew how to look the part, if you will, and she was in beauty pageants. Those There's some things that are red flags. If somebody is perfect, and we know perfect is not perfect, right? But if somebody looks perfect all the time, that is a red flag. That's a red flag that something's going on. That their quest to be perfect, they're never going to be happy because you can never reach perfection, if that makes sense to you. But there are some basics, red flags that we can look for. So let's talk about that really quickly. A couple of red flags you can look for. If the person indicates in any way that they're thinking about taking their lives, like if they start to give away possessions, their pets, their cars, whatever. If they're going into a deep depressive state, right, not caring about how they look, those are some telltale signs that something's wrong. But again, as I said, the opposite could be true too. The person could really care too much about their appearance. They could, and this word always concerns me, right? If somebody is described as always being happy and upbeat, always being perfect, always being strong, right? That's the thing that everybody's been talking about recently, is check up on your strong friends, right? Nobody's always anything. So just keep that in mind. Um, this was her last post on Instagram, and she said, "May this day bring you rest and peace." And I am a firm believer that people who take their own lives, they know the beginning, the middle, and the end of their lives. They are well aware of how things will end. The other thing that I'm just looking for small details. She has the black fist there. That's with purpose, right? That's a purposeful thing. She could have put her picture there, but she put that there. That indicates that she is fully aware of the struggle and probably was in the midst of a struggle of her own when it comes to color and race and things in her world, right? Um, but yeah, that was her last post. May this day bring you rest and peace. Now, I want to talk about this next couple. This is Ronnell and Keianna Burns. This is another recent suicide. This was November 2021, so at the very end of last year, a couple months ago. This was an Atlanta couple. They moved from St. Louis. Again, on the outside, they appear to be successful. They ran a couple of businesses, barbershop, beauty shop, insurance business, probably some other things, right? So this is a couple that knew how to hustle, if you will, right? They also had 8 children. And so, again, this death was really a shock to their friends and families and people around them. Uh, Put simply, she killed the husband and then killed herself. And there still hasn't been a lot that came out about why this happened. I would assume or guess that they probably had some financial issues and some issues in the marriage. That's usually what happens when people do a double, a homicide and then kill themselves. But all this took place after about 6 months of them moving to Atlanta. So in her last post, again, people tell you when they need help. Her Facebook Live, she went on and she said, I'm asking you one thing because I really need it right now. I need prayer. I need prayer. I need strength. I need love. Pray for me. You can't cry out for help any more than that. Now, I don't know what the follow up conversations were like between she and her loved ones and the friends and so forth. Um, but these are small things that we have to watch out for because there's no glaring thing that has happened in any of these suicides that I'm talking about here today. Okay, so just watch out for people. Watch for those keywords, right? I need prayer. I need strength. I need help. I need love, is what she's saying. I need help. Um, don't ignore those signs. The next one I want to talk about here is Ian King, Regina King's son. He was 26 years old. Again, described as being the strong friend, the happy go lucky friend, right? Always laughing, talking, was very artistic. So, all of these very, very positive attributes and descriptions for Ian. And again, people around him were shocked that he took his own life. Uh, Ian's one of his last posts was on Instagram, and he said something to the fact that, quote unquote, I don't think Instagram is healthy for me. He mentioned, and somewhere I read that he was losing it, is how he put it. I'm losing it. So again, those are small, small details, but when somebody tells you they're losing it, they feel like they don't have control, they need help. Yep, that's when you go get help. And what do I mean when I say go get help? You take them straight to the doctor, to the hospital. Or like I said, call that number if they're threatening suicide. But yeah, so that was Ian. Again, has his whole life ahead of him, and whatever happened, he just couldn't take it and took his own life. And so, one of the commonalities that we find a few days after Cheslie committed suicide, her mom did come out and say that she had high, high functioning, is what she called it, depression. And so, that'll lead me into talking about risk factors. And so, Gail King asked a good question. How do I know if somebody needs help? So, this is how you know, Gail and everybody else. Some of the risk factors are people who have mental health conditions. And one of the issues and concerns in our community is that we're not properly diagnosed, right? We don't really go to a doctor or to a psychiatrist to be diagnosed with a mental health illness. But if somebody is diagnosed with, say, depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, watch out for those people. There are other, things that you see that are kind of normalized, unfortunately, in our community. People who are really aggressive, people who have significant mood changes. They don't know how to have good relationships with others, right? Sometimes at that level that we just talked about, the younger ages, they'll have something called conduct disorder, right? You don't know how to behave according to society standards. You have anxiety disorders. And then you have that whole sector of people that may have some really serious, physical ailments, whether they were born with it or had a car accident or something, traumatic brain injuries, that sort of thing. So those are all risk factors. And again, with Chesley, her mom said that she had depression. She called it high functioning depression, right? So that means that you can do a lot of things. Gail King talked about her having a really full, busy calendar. You can be high functioning in many things: depression, alcoholism, right? Drug abuse. You can be a high functioning individual in all those areas. But those are some risk factors, okay? And again, if somebody is not formally diagnosed with some of that stuff, you know when somebody is aggressive or when they have sudden mood changes, right? So just watch out for that stuff. Some other signs that we can look for in our loved ones. If you notice that people have sudden changes, like they're all of a sudden having trouble concentrating or remembering things, they're not able to really make decisions. They're always suffering from fatigue and just kind of feeling worthless and helpless. They're pessimistic about everything, right? Nothing is ever good enough, or they're not optimistic about certain things. They're hopeless. If they're having a lot of trouble sleeping, or if they're waking up super early. And some of these things we just go through in life through, it's called regular stress. But again, these are sudden changes, right? So this is somebody who was one way, and then all of a sudden you notice some of these things. So again, yeah, those are some risk factors. Any sudden even aches and pains, and a lot of digestive disorders, that kind of stuff all could be related to mental health. So just encourage your folks to go see somebody to get some professional help. There are also some environmental factors that we have to consider, right? So we have, basic risk factors, but we also have things in our environment that, kind of add to the equation. And so if somebody has an environment where they have a lot of firearms or drugs around them, that's a red flag, right? If somebody is under prolonged stress, and in our community, some would argue that our whole life is prolonged stress, right? But again, this is outside of the norm. So if there is a relationship issue that has recently happened, if they're, constantly being bullied, or there's constantly problems at their job, this sort of prolonged stress is what we're talking about here. Also, if they have a stressful life event, right? Like they're on the brink of divorce, they're on the brink of bankruptcy, or some other sort of crisis situation that's going to cause them to have to transition or alter their life in some way, their family. Those are all things that are considered environmental factors that we need to watch out for. We also can talk about things like rejection, right? Especially with social media and this whole thing with quote unquote finding friends on social media being rejected and canceled. Those are all issues that we need to look out for, and those are all environmental factors. And the other thing you want to think about, children. Unfortunately, we've had some cases in America where children, and African American children, have committed suicide. And you have to watch out for that neglect and abuse at home, right? And the whole bullying issue that I mentioned just a little while ago. Those are real, very real life altering things, and they don't really have the brain development to know how to deal with that sort of trauma. So, again, those are all things to watch out for. Now, when it comes to prevention and awareness, prevention is tricky. I don't know that you can prevent somebody from doing something to themselves, but you can certainly have more awareness and look for signs, right? And so, one of the things I think that we can do as a community and individually is to make sure you have access to mental health. And I feel like I've said this at almost every video. There's good teletherapy out there. You don't even have to leave your house anymore. You can find a teletherapist. Depending on what type of insurance you have, you may get a certain number of psychology therapist visits. If you need medication, a psychiatrist. There's just so many options out there. So just make sure you have access to mental health, right? Whether you need it or not. And try to think about mental health in a proactive way. One of the things that I'm going to do, because I'm going to practice what I preach, right? I am going to find a therapist, and I'm just going to get them, in my phone, have a meeting with them, and ask them if it's okay if I do check-ins. And I'll talk about that in a second. But we just have to be really proactive about our own mental health. There's tons of things you can do. Everybody's Zooming, and they have all these online and remote meetings and things. Throw mental health in there. Get some therapists on there and have them give you tips for you and a couple friends or something. Just make mental health part of your everyday routine. And the other thing we can do is becoming more connected with our family and community, right? We're starting to just get back out for people in some states into the community. And so, you have a lot of activities that are going on now where you're face to face, hopefully. And, just start to make those connections and start to, again, incorporate mental health into whatever you're doing as a family or community unit. Um, and I'll do another video later about problem solving and coping. That's a whole entity in itself. People not knowing how to deal with adversity and not knowing how to cope, right? Those are called executive functioning skills. Um, and again, just creating norms within your friend group or your family, making mental health and mental wellness a part of your norms, making it normal. So again, this whole idea of check-ins, I kind of thought about this, and I don't know if it's a thing, but it'll definitely be a thing for me. Like I said, I'm going to develop check-ins with someone to make sure that I am on the right track, to make sure that there are no red flags, as I just mentioned, for some of those folks that we saw there. Um, but yeah, start to do your own research. Start to talk to people. And I was at a restaurant a couple weeks ago, and I probably have seen it a million times and just never read it. There are all these flyers on the table about mental health. So I picked up a few of them and I read them. And so I'm like, okay, this is a first step because I've never even read this kind of thing. But it featured all types of local agencies, in it. So look for that kind of thing when you go get a coffee or something like that. But this notion of check-ins is really, really important, especially again, your strong friends, your strong family members. Figure out a way that you can check in on those people and how you guys could check in on each other, like make it mutual and do something more than, hey, I'm just calling to check on you. Make it intentional. I talk about that a lot too. Make your phone call intentional. It doesn't have to be long, but it can be, how are you doing? Do you need help? Is there anything I can help you with? That sort of thing. Make your conversation intentional, and with purpose. So just like we do wellness checks for people, do mental health checks for people. And as always, there is certainly a mental health connection to everything we've been talking about. And again, this whole notion of being depressed, right, and having these mental health issues is very, very important. Just make sure you watch out for each other. And I'll leave it at that. Um, But in terms of mental health, there's this book called The Fallacy of Happiness, a psychological investigation of suicide among successful people. And this really makes that connection between suicide and mental health. And the quote here is self-explanatory, but it really says a lot about society. The author says suicide reflects our limitations as a society towards maintaining mental health and well being. So, wow, as a society, if we have that 1.3, whatever that was, million people attempting suicide, it means as a society, we're not doing a very good job at helping people maintain, a healthy mental health and wellness lifestyle. Uh, I'm going to get the names of the authors wrong, so I'll put it down in the description box. But really interesting article. Um, it talks about the psychological process underlying any suicide, and it talks about how complex it is. And so there's not, to answer Gail King and other people's questions, there's not any one thing that you can look for, right? It's a very, very complex set of issues that people have. And so they go on to talk about that there's no single event or, there's no single event that we can pinpoint or label as the cause for somebody taking their own life. Um, but the one thing that all of these people have in common is emotional pain, right? And that seems very simple, but it is what it is. It's the emotional pain. And, we all have different thresholds for pain. So just think about it that way. Um, and I'll leave you with this. So, in terms of Cheslie, um, if you've had a chance to look at like her YouTube channel and things like that, she doesn't have many videos on there because again, it was just about her hair journey. But there are some things that you can get from it. And so, in one of her videos, she talked about in high school. She came back early from spring break because she wanted to compete in a track meet. And she said she tried so hard. She really wanted to compete for this event because she wanted to get a medal. And in order to get a medal, you had to come in between first and third place. And unfortunately, she came in fourth. And so she was so bummed. And again, this is an adult telling this story, that happened probably a decade before, if not more. And so she was really bummed that she didn't get the medal. And so again, it's this quest to be perfect, right? Um, and so that gives us a glimpse into her emotional pain as the book talks about, right? And the most telling thing is she wrote a piece for Allure magazine about turning 30 and what that was like. And she also mentioned that she was the oldest Miss USA winner. So she won when she was 28 years old, and apparently she was the oldest person to win. But here's her quote. And this tells you, just like the couple, she was crying out. She said, "I need prayer." This quote tells you everything you need to know. In Allure magazine, she wrote, "I am turning 30. I cringe a little. Sometimes I can successfully mask this uncomfortable response with excitement. Other times my enthusiasm feels hollow, like bad acting. Society has never been kind to those growing old, especially women. Occasional exceptions are made for some of the rich and a few of the famous." And this is such a sad thing to me. And again, this was a couple years ago. I never saw this Allure article until her passing. But it tells you everything you need to know, right? She's aging. She doesn't feel successful, even though she was. She talks about being able to mask things, right? So beauty pageants and being in media teaches you how to mask. She talks about being uncomfortable. She talks about feeling hollow, right? That hollowness or that numbness. Um, and talks about, not being accepted in society. And so we'll leave on that note. As African Americans, that is a plight that many of us have. We are not accepted in society, and we've been fighting for a long time. And it goes back to her picture. I believe it was her Instagram post again with the black fist. That's something to be aware of. That shows that she was, she supported probably a bunch of social justice platforms and efforts, but it also shows that she um, possibly was entrenched in some sort of drama. And so it's just so unfortunate. It appears to be such a beautiful soul that we have lost, as well as the male and female couple, the married couple, as well as Ian Alexander. So I'll leave with that. In closing, I feel that people who take their own lives, they know their beginning, middle, and end already. And so this picture is very symbolic. She seems like she did a lot in her life, um, but her journey is now over. So rest in paradise to all of the people that we featured here today. And as I said before, go ahead and put this number on your phone in case you or somebody else needs it. It's better to be safe than sorry. And as always, I thank you guys for joining us here at Before You Go. I hope that some of this information was helpful and useful to you. Again, I look forward to seeing some of your comments below. But this is definitely something that we need to put at the top of our priority list in terms of at the African American community. And I hope this information helped you on your journey, on your road to emotional freedom. So I look forward to speaking with you guys and doing the next video. Take care of yourselves and your family members. And again, just do the check-ins and all of that, and be aware of those people in seeking perfection, those people who are strong, those people who are always anything. Just watch out for those things. Take care of yourself, guys.